Dave.
Don.
Shane.
Chad.
These sci-fi guys.
Beyond the big screen.
Welcome to the Sci-Fi Guys, and we are here with another episode of Beyond the Big Screen with our two Padawans, Shane.
What's up, everybody?
And John.
I'll graduate one day.
One day we will.
One day we will. Oh, okay. So we are going to be, as if you guys saw our last one of these, we are picking pilots of TV shows, since instead of doing movies like we typically do, last time we did Star Trek The Next Generation. This time we are doing Battlestar Galactica. This is the original one from 1978, not the reboot from 2003. So,
although I will say, to say we're watching pilots, these pilots sure are long.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these pilots are 2 hours, so they're feature length movies, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, well, let's just get started. What was your immediate reaction after watching the pilot? What did you like or dislike about this show?
So I'll go first. Just to be honest, for whenever it happened, I was kind of hopeful because I think it was 1978. You said, right? So,
Yep,
so I was thinking like coming off of Star Wars and everything. I was thinking like, okay, it's going to kind of be, but I think I told either John or Dave offline this. It felt like a Star Wars ripoff to me. It just didn't have it. Felt like it tried too hard to be what Star Wars was, as far as the plot, as far as the ships, as far as the music, and it just didn't seem like it hit to me. I'll concentrate on the music. To be honest with you, they needed John Williams to do this. I'll be honest with you. It was too coming off of Star Wars and what he did there, and obviously they were trying to mimic kind of the success off of that, but it just kind of fell flat. I'll be honest.
I love the music, but that's just, I grew up with it too. So
yeah.
I really thought you were going to say, "Oh, it was pretty good," you know.
I definitely see the Star Wars influence, and it was me you were talking to that about. So I definitely get that that general vibe, especially with several of the areas we ended up in this pilot. Mm-hmm. I will say I think I probably tended to enjoy it a little more. However, I will say it is very oddly just like stereotypical sci-fi is the best way I know how to put it. Like, that doesn't necessarily make it bad for me. It's just like right in the middle, average. If I think sci-fi, I think this would fit the mold fairly easily, especially if we're talking space sci-fi, which obviously we are for this. And so for me, it just kind of fits that same kind of typical mold of space sci-fi, especially after watching both some of the old Star Trek, the Next Gen, a lot of the movies that were out during this time. It didn't really break the mold on anything. Then again, I don't necessarily think it had to. And I don't necessarily think it was, like a B-rated show or anything. Like it's a solid attempt. Like, it's a solid show. I feel like it's just, it's pretty average in terms of everything that was out then and shortly following and shortly before.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. It felt like it came off very generic. It didn't seem like it was anything like different, I guess. Anything unique, I guess, might be a good word to put it.
Okay. All right. So, which characters are you most curious about so far?
I mean, I'm curious about Starbuck and if he's going to continue being this overarching goofball that kind of continues throughout the series. I mean, he seems kind of Goose and Maverick. They kind of seem to have that vibe set up with their fighter pilots, which I think, especially for that not being a thing yet. I think that was a very cool dynamic to see. And so I'll definitely take that one over other things. But overall, yeah, I would definitely like to know more about Starbuck, see how he interacts with his dad more as well.
Starbuck,
Because I think
dad, no, Apollo had his dad was Commander Adama, not Starbuck.
Okay. Well, then I would like to see that
Starbuck was
relationship
the
as
blonde.
well. Got you. See, they look very similar to me, especially with hairstyles. So I will say though that father-son relationship, especially in command and not, like, I think that could get real tricky as the show goes on. So I'd be interested to see that fleshed out more too.
Yeah, I agree. I think the commander is a very interesting character, and you could tell even from the very beginning when they were trying to get this alliance set up, he was very, very weary of it, and you can tell just he has some of those military instincts, just to where he really doesn't trust what's going on, and he's trying to kind of get a contingency plan going and try to protect those that are under his command. And I would be very interested to see where his character goes. The character of Boltar, who was the one who was
The bad guy.
Yes, and you didn't catch it till later on, but I think he would be an interesting character too.
Okay. All right. So was the cast interaction a good mix?
I think so. It seemed like they interacted well. I think the characters were pretty solid. Um, Again, you could tell they were trying to do some character dynamics, kind of from Star Wars. You could even see like what John said with the two, with the brothers and kind of the dynamic they had between each other. It kind of felt like a Han Solo and a Luke Skywalker kind of feel, big brother, little brother kind of thing. But I think that overall they did mesh pretty well, I felt like.
I was gonna say, for the two we've seen so far, I definitely think this one did a little better job in terms of the pilot of the cast meshing well. I can definitely see where, next gen they would start to get there. And again, we talked about how that kind of greenness felt, even the story they were going for. So part of it honestly may have been intentional. But this cast did seem to, at least to me, gel a little bit better in regards to. I also think this script felt a little like looser in terms of like overall there was a bit more of like they could have a relaxed kind of mood as actors, and I think that probably helped them gel a little bit better because they could kind of joke around and buddy around just as a part of the script, and I think that made it a little easier for them to gel. But even then, the people who didn't necessarily seem to gel, I mean, in their story, they weren't supposed to. So I think overall it fit that idea of, mixing well with each other and interacting well. I think both partially because the story lent itself to that, and these actors just kind of did a little better from the get-go. But again, like we talked about with Star Trek before, I think theirs could have just been intentional just as much as it was greenness to the show. So
I agree.
Unfortunately, everything is going to be compared to Star Trek, most likely. I mean, the Next Generation was always compared to the original series. Now, you guys are going to compare every pilot basically to them, to the Next Generation, because that was the first one you saw.
Yeah, and that's a big, that's a big bar to set.
But that also speaks very well to it. If
it does,
even at first it made that big of an impression, I think that's a pretty good job.
It does. Yeah, they set the bar pretty high.
Well, definitely. I mean, we are talking two totally different franchises here.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah,
and there is reasons behind a lot of the stuff that you guys are mentioning, and I'll talk about maybe some of it at the end. And last week I didn't ask. I said you guys were gonna have to rate it, and then I never did. But that's up to y'all. If you want to rate it, you can. But
you can.
Let's go on. Let's keep going. Would you be upset if one of the major characters left the show?
Now, see, for me, this one's a bit trickier with this one, simply because I don't have a connection to any of the actors or actresses here. But even then, I think with the setup we have on the front end of the story of them basically being escapees from a major attack, if any of them were lost along the way, and it almost happened, it felt like several times, even in the pilot, I feel like it would make like sense with what we were set up with, to the point that I wouldn't necessarily mind. Although, of course, as the show goes on, you build relationships with these characters. Of course, I think it would get to a point where it's like, man, I really hate that they're off. But for the story that was set up, I don't think I would be as upset with any of these, just because they are in more of a survival situation than, whereas like in Star Trek, they were more in control of a situation. They come in and they help and they do these things as a part of the final frontier of space. Mm-hmm. But, here in Battlestar, they're running, they're trying to survive. And I think with that, I wouldn't mind as much if certain characters were off, just because of the setup.
I agree. I think the storyline really sets itself up to where if a main character did die off because they are trying to escape, you would kind of get it. It would make sense. I think John, kind of like you pointed out, I think they purposefully did not really allow you to at first really build that connection with some of the characters, because they were basically going to wipe them out, basically. But I think later on, as the series goes, I think it's kind of like it would be with any show, you would kind of get invested in those characters because you've had time with them. You've seen them develop. You've seen them go through things. And I think later on it might be an issue, but because of how they set this up with the annihilation of the colonies, then it makes sense that some are going to die off. So I agree.
Okay. So what did y'all think of the script? Did it gel? Did it make sense? Was it disjointed? Like last week, you actually had 2 episodes that were crammed together, and that was the pilot. But you two didn't really notice a big difference on that. So I'm just wondering if y'all think of anything different this week.
Okay, I still say it was a Star Wars ripoff. I'm sorry. That's just how it hit me. The script wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I just think, especially since I did a little bit of digging behind the scenes and saw the timeline of it and saw what it was trying to do, that's just how it came off to me. The script wasn't bad. It really was not. But for what they were trying to do and really kind of cast it as a kind of ride off of Star Wars, it just didn't hit for me.
Well, I mean, it was going to ride off. Everything was going to ride off Star Wars at that point, because Star Wars came out in 1977. This was in pre-production during when Star Wars was being filmed, even. Mm-hmm. But the two were very similar, and you get that. But everything is like we said, everything is going to be compared to TNG. Now, everything from 1977 on was compared to Star Wars.
Yep.
So.
Oh yeah, for sure,
definitely.
Which I will say, the script definitely made sense. We set up a problem, we set up a solution, and then we set up ongoing problems because of the original problem. And I think that's classic storytelling. From that standpoint, it definitely lends itself to continue the show. But I also think it did well. And I mean, technically I cheated the way I watched it this time, because I did actually have 3 separate episodes, so it did feel disjointed. But I think had I watched them continuously on Plex, I don't think I would have noticed as much. They did flow just fine, really, because they kind of pick up right where you left off, and then you call it a day. And I think that lends itself well to storytelling too. And so overall, I think the script gelled fine. I don't think I saw any issues between the 3-part split and it being 2 hours. Again, for both of the ones we've watched so far, I think they would have done fine if they would have premiered as like 2-hour premieres, like some modern shows will. And so I think both of these shows would have done fine with that. And you couldn't have really told, that they were separated as much as they actually were in real life, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so what did you think of the look of the show? The special effects, sets, costumes. Just remember, this was 1978. So, did they distract from the story? Did they help the story? What'd y'all think?
Now, see, for me, this is a part where this one shined a little bit because I feel like for what they throw at you, for it to be a television show, especially, I mean, I'm fairly impressed with the number of what I assume to be models and cutaway shots from the sides. Like when they drive through the mist and they're throwing a smoke machine at the side of a model with somebody inside it. Like, I know what the tricks are, but I still was drawn in by them because there's just something magical about practical effects. There's something magical about building an entire world with scale models and just enjoying throwing fireworks and other things at them to make it look spacey and pew pewy. And, you know, like the lasers, honestly, I was fine with. So holistically, at least in this pilot, I really enjoyed the setup they had in terms of costumes, the modeling, and in fact, to a point where, I think they blow a lot of modern CGI out of the water too. It's just the one caveat I would have is a lot of the backgrounds, you know, that's where things were a little more fuzzy for me. So like, man, that model looks great. And then I look at the background it's being placed in. It's like, I mean, okay, it's a planet in space. I get that. That's where it would start to be like, we could have done more work on those guys. If we spent all these time on these, we could put a little more work on the backgrounds. So if I had anything, I was like, I don't really know about
like
this.
If a ship is flying over another ship, you know.
Over another ship. Those ships over.
Remember, that was all infancy too for a TV show. So.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. And that's why, like, I'm still impressed by what they did do. It's just if I had to have like okay, guys, it would be backgrounds, but otherwise, I was completely fine with it.
Mm-hmm. I think that for a TV show at that time, I think when you compare it, and again, if you were to compare it to Star Wars, it doesn't quite match up. But at the same point, when you think about a major motion picture versus a TV show, I do think they did a good job. I think that, like John said, a lot of the ships and the models and everything, I thought it was done well, and it was a lot of the effects made it feel bigger. It really did. I don't think it took away from it. I think it added to it. Yeah, I mean, think they did a good job as far as that goes. I do. I don't think it was quite as much. And again, this is comparing it to Next Generation. That one, like we said last week, it felt like a motion picture. This one didn't quite hit that, but I don't feel like it came off as cheap either. I don't feel like it came off that way.
Okay, so do you guys want to see the next episode? And if you don't, why not? I mean, be honest. You don't have to like everything that I give you guys.
Yeah, I don't.
I know you're not, and I can tell you why. Shane's gonna say because it's a ripoff of Star Wars.
That's a big part of it for me. It just didn't catch me. Now, more episodes later on, it might. I don't know. It sometimes the pilot is rough, and it gets better and better from there. I mean, it could be. But from right off, it didn't connect with me. And that's just being honest. It didn't connect.
And see, I'm just a sucker and somebody who needs more shows to watch. So, but that's not the reason I would want to watch the next episode, at least not exclusively. I do like a good underdog story, and I feel like that's kind of what this is set up to be. You know, can humanity survive with everything that was just thrown at it? And yes, although it's very Rebel-like, if we're making the comparisons we are, I think I'm fine with that. I would enjoy watching it fleshed out. And honestly, who is this produced by? Who syndicated it on TV?
Glenn A. Larson was the director.
I saw this. Was it CBS? Was it?
Oh yeah, it was. Hold on. It was.
I saw that earlier. But
ABC.
I can't remember. It was ABC. Okay.
I was like, because if it was CBS, and they had a real shameful time if they did not bring in Star Trek.
Yeah, it was ABC.
It was ABC. Okay.
Okay, that makes more sense. I'm more okay with that because I was like, honestly, a band of survivors in trouble in the middle of space screams, "I need help" from are Trekkies, and so
Yeah.
I think a crossover would have been huge back then.
That would have been.
And I would have loved to have seen that. But even standalone Battlestar Galactica, I enjoy especially the combat idea. I enjoy the getting into silly situations because we didn't pay attention hard enough. It's very, very fitting for the time it was around, and I just love watching stuff like that. And I'm always a sucker for good, you know, is it visual effects? I'm
Yeah,
trying to
visual
think of what counts as real effects, because technically CGI is still a visual effect. Practical.
Non-CGI. How about you?
I'm
just
a
say
sucker for practical visual effects.
practical
There you go.
effects.
There you
Okay.
go.
And so I'd be willing to watch it just to catch some more of that and see some of the tricks and tools of the trade.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So after watching this episode, where do you see the series going?
50-50. They live or they die. And this is just the journey for how they get there. That's the only way I can see it going, is they either continue to survive and thrive, or eventually they get caught and they perish.
Yeah, same. Basically, not a lot to add to it.
Or maybe
Just
even
kinda
the
see where they
penultimate
go.
they find their sister civilization. Maybe they
Yeah,
find Earth.
yeah.
Fade to
So did
black
the
as
plot
Earth
leave
comes
you
up.
guys with any questions, or do you think that it pretty much answered everything?
I think it for the most part answered everything. Just to kind of see where it goes and see what happens next. I mean, what do they do? What's their next goal? Are the where's the sister civilization? Where are they going next? Kind of.
Yeah.
That sounds
I mean-
very generic, but yeah, that's all I can think of.
I mean, for their intent, I think it answered enough. I would have liked to have. I'm always a sucker for good pre-story, especially as you fill it in throughout the show. So maybe some flashbacks to the ancient civilization as it forms. Like an episode dedicated to that, or an episode dedicated to how the council was doing before this trap.
Yeah.
I enjoy a good throwback in the middle of a series to fill in some gaps. I wouldn't mind some gap filling, but outside of that, for what happened and where they are, I think they answered everything I would have had to have asked. So
Good. Playing with the drops this week.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is the way.
Okay. This is the way. Yeah. Okay. So to answer some of your questions, I know you guys said you don't care about not plot holes, but plots, future, whatever. You don't want to be surprised too much. Okay. This was only on one season. So it only made it one season. Basically, the plot was roughly estimate between $7 and $14 million
Okay.
in 1978.
yeah,
Okay.
so huge.
Okay.
For a show.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it was huge. And then each episode ran about $1 million, which was twice the typical budget of a TV show
Oh wow.
back then. It originally was only supposed to be a 7-series miniseries. That was it.
Okay.
But then Star Wars happened.
Mm.
Yeah,
When Star Wars happened, they're like, we got to make this into a series, is what the executive said. And so they rushed to make everything happen. They were finishing scripts, handing them to the actors. The actors would look at them, and then they would have to read the lines. I mean, on some of the cases, it was literally that quick.
And see, that makes me wonder what it would have been like if they would have kept it how they originally planned it.
Yeah, I would.
How
I
that-
would
how
have
that would have
loved that, and we'll get into that
Yeah.
some more.
Okay.
Ratings. It when it premiered, it was a weekly top 5. It was one of the top 5 ones when it premiered. But viewership quickly dropped from 40% to under 30% within 2 months.
Oh.
CBS counter-programmed aggressively against this show.
of course.
This show was set for Saturday evening at 8:00 is when it was. So so CBS said, you know what? We're moving All in the Family and Alice to Saturday evening at 8:00.
Oh.
And All in the Family with Archie Bunker and
Mhm.
Alice, both of them were hits.
I'll say that
And
stuff
so-
is neat.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, so they were going against tough competition. I already told you about the scripts. The 8 p.m. slot also meant strict censorship. So a lot of the stuff that they wanted to do with the Cylons, they could not do.
Okay.
Strictly because of censorship. There was, so they had to downplay the threat of the Cylons a lot. Get off of here. How do I get that off? Done. All right, that's one. Okay. 20th Century Fox sued Universal, basically ABC, over 34 specific similarities to Star Wars. In other words, the Cylons look like stormtroopers.
Mhm.
The Emperor looked, they had the Imperial, Emperor, and then Star Wars had the Emperor, rocket fighters, etc. Blah blah blah.
Mhm.
Even though they resolved out of court years later, the lawsuit still just basically put this umbrella over everything, and it just made everything weird. If they would not have put it on Saturday night at 8, or I'm sorry, it was Sunday night at 8:00, not Saturday. If they wouldn't have put it on then, it would have probably done better because it was just too competitive. That was the big thing. Okay, so where did the show go? It was on one season. There was some really fantastic episodes. It really was. There was a couple of them that were really good. There was one of them where Starbuck crashes on a planet that already had a Cylon that had crashed on that planet.
Oh, okay.
And the Cylon was reprogrammed and didn't know that he was a colonial warrior. So, and then it was basically like an Old West type.
See, that would be cool.
Yeah, that one was a fun episode. There was a couple other ones that were they were really good. Boxy's mother, she ended up dying in the next episode. And so Apollo basically raises Boxy on his own. So there was that. Basically because she was, I don't know if you guys know who the actress was, right? Jane Goodall.
Oh, okay.
That was who the actress was. And I don't know if you guys are probably not big into 80s music like I am, but Zach, who Apollo's brother, that was Rick Springfield. So
Okay. Okay.
the singer. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, there was a lot of people. The guy that played Adama, Lauren Green, he was huge in, I think it was Gunsmoke. Was his whatever his previous show was. So he was just really big on that. And so they wanted somebody with that type of gravitas
to draw people in.
Adama, and to draw people in. Everybody else was pretty much an unknown. Richard Hatch, I think, was known for a couple of other things. Dirk Benedict, it is funny. Dirk Benedict ends up becoming face man in the A-Team later on. And at the intro of the A-Team, they're at Universal and a Cylon walks in front of him and he goes like that. Like that.
I love
kind
that.
of a nod back to the show.
I love that.
They did make a sequel series called Galactica 1980. It was horrible. It was so bad that both Starbuck and Apollo said, "No, we're not doing it. We're not going to do it." They wanted to go with a younger audience. They tried to go with a younger crew. They did have Adama was on there, but he had a beard and it just didn't look right, And that in Galactica 1980 they find Earth.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And Earth is Sierra 1977. So they're not ready for the Cylons.
Yeah.
And then they're riding around on motorcycles that can fly. I mean, it was just really bad. Apparently the last episode was the only good episode because Starbuck comes on it. So apparently it was the only one. So that was it. There was comic books out. nothing else was done with the series
Mm.
until 2003. They did a reboot, and when they did a reboot, they decided, you know what, we're going to go dark.
Huh.
So I'm not going to force you guys to watch the pilot on that because it's a mini series, and it's like 6 episodes, each one an hour long. So I'll kind of give you the gist of everything. The gist is the Cylons are totally different, or they do have the original Centurions like we had here
Mhm.
in this one. They are in there later on, but they have a different robot, and the Cylons have humanoid skin on several models. There is, I want to say there was 9 models or 10 models. I could be wrong on that, but that basically interacted with humans. They looked just like us. They acted just like us. They sounded and smelled everything just like us. And you couldn't tell who it was until later on. And the Galactica was basically getting ready to be retired. It was getting ready to go to and be put in a museum because everything on it was old. It wasn't all computerized. And when the Cylons, when they did come and attack, they were able to knock out anything with modern technology. The eye was like something, and then they would just basically float and do nothing. And the Galactica was able to fight against them because it didn't have modern technology. So it was very similar. But it was much, much darker. The relationship between Apollo and his father was very, very strained. Very, very. They fought all the time. Starbuck, they turned into a girl, which was fine. But that series ended really weird. A second ago, that was at the beginning when Zach and Apollo were taking off. Right after they took off, and you saw the front, there was a Cylon ship right behind them. You probably did if you didn't notice it. It was real small, but it was like that's not supposed to be there. And you'll see them. They recycle because they end up having to do everything so quickly. Like when they have the big screen, the Cylons are all coming, and then you saw the 2 little blips of the 2 Vipers coming. One's ahead, one's in behind. They reuse that shot a lot.
I mean, fair.
They did perfect the blowing up the ship and then flying through it. That was one thing that Battlestar Galactica did. They really did that. They did that well. See, I loved the music. The dun, 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 I wasn't a big fan of the Cylon music, because they kind of had their own theme. I thought that was kind of a ripoff of Empire.
Yeah.
Or maybe Empire ripped them off. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
the music wasn't bad. It just did not feel unique to me. Like when you think about the music for Star Wars, you think about the music for Star Trek, it's different. There's not anything really like it. And this just felt very generic, celebratory march kind of thing.
Yeah, it was
a
lot of that.
Just didn't have.
But did you see where it was recorded with? It was the San Francisco Philharmonic Orchestra.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, right at the
Good
beginning
orchestra.
when you see the title, when the credits are rolling.
Oh, I missed that.
It's on there.
The long front credits.
Yeah.
Those credits were long. I bet you guys probably fast forward through a lot of those until he started talking,
Yes.
And it's funny because I've read the books. I've read the book, and in the book, Baltar is killed. And if you'll notice the series, when they realized, they wanted to make a series out of this because Baltar was technically killed off screen. If you'll notice, it said epilogue, and then they brought Baltar back, and they were like, "Oh, well, we haven't killed him yet," because
yeah.
And that was basically beep 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 trying to get out of the hole they were in because they were like, "Oh, it's not going to be a mini series. Now you want to make it a weekly series? Okay, we've got to have a baddie. We got to have a
You gotta have
bad
that
person." and you don't want to spend the money on dressing somebody up in the Centurion every week.
Yeah.
Oh, Baltar's cheaper. Let's just keep him and do it that way.
Mhm.
So, yeah, there was a lot of decisions that were made. It wasn't, and it was not the greatest series. It really wasn't. I mean, but it did do a lot for the future for other movies coming out, especially when they went to the kind of the darker side, come to the dark side. When they, in 2003, when they rebooted it again, there's a lot of characters. I love the reboot because you don't just get the same, so many movies and TV shows, you get the main cast. That's what you see, but when they did the reboot, you had the everyday guys that were there. You had the mechanics. They were part of the characters, so, and then
just
like they were getting ready,
like
they would be getting ready to launch, and then the jet would break, and they're like, "Come on, I gotta go," and they're like, "Okay, we're fixing it right now," and they put those into the miniseries and into the regular series, and again, that just like that, when like so many other things, they start strong and then it just kind of peters off, and
I get that.
Unfortunately, that's executives didn't really know what they had with the show. I mean, because they had a good cast, they really did. The interaction, especially later on as you get on here, the interaction between Starbuck and Boomer are priceless. They're like best friends, and Colonel Ty to Adama, they like bounce ideas off of each other all the time, and you lose that whole Council of 12 thing. That thing goes away, after the pilot. It's pretty much whatever Adama says they do. So another Battlestar does show up in both series, the Battlestar Pegasus. So and then for a while there you have two Battlestars, and they're kicking tail,
Nice.
So
I mean, they did have
one
good
thing.
stuff, I'm not gonna lie.
The Vipers were good.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
The gunners on the Battlestar, I think they all were stormtroopers because they couldn't hit squat half the time.
I think so.
One thing that I liked about the miniseries better than the original series is, it's the ship is a Battlestar for a reason. It's supposed to kick butt, not just Vipers. The ship itself is supposed to kick butt, and they do that in the new series. The old series is pretty much it's all Vipers, and then they got the little they did have one of them where a Cylon. One episode, I'll tell you, and then we'll end it here. One episode where they had a Cylon actually fly down where they land at on one of the legs that come out and crash himself on purpose, and then it causes a massive fire.
Oh wow!
Where they actually had to they could land on the one side, they couldn't land on the other, and the whole episode was just all about fire, and fire was everywhere. They actually took the lasers off of the Vipers, and they were putting water cannons like super soakers on them, and they were flying up almost to it, and then shooting the super soakers and then pulling away.
That's funny.
I'm just like, really? Okay,
that's funny.
So yeah, let's throw the little banner up here again. Everybody, you guys, if you guys are enjoying these things, it seems like the numbers y'all like these better than our regular show sometimes. We don't know. Again, we don't know YouTube's algorithm. We can't figure it out. We just do this for fun. But you guys can email us, TheseSciFiGuys@gmail.com. We're on all the social media, like Twitter and Facebook are the best two that we do, at TheseSciFiGuys. Yeah, come check us out. Email us, send us a direct message, whatever. I mean, that's how we get to know those sci-fi guys. It was through Twitter. Anyway, so remember, wherever you go, there you are. Until next time.
Crash and burn.
These Sci-Fi Guys is an independent broadcast by the Sci-Fi Guy Productions. For more information on upcoming episodes, follow us on Twitter or X at the Sci-Fi Guys. For our audio-only listeners, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Like, subscribe, or leave a comment to let us know how we're doing.